What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the HG Sports Podcast. How's everybody doing today? It is January 8th, 2020. It is my first time recording in 2020. I did put one out, an episode out in the beginning of the year, but but I didn't record. I don't know why that even matters. I don't know why I'm saying that. Couple things on the agenda. I just want to remind you guys that if you are listening to the audio version only on Spotify or Stitcher, then you're missing out on other content on YouTube. On Spotify and Stitcher, I only post my podcast episodes. On YouTube, I post little snippets of my thoughts and ideas on certain football topics. That's called Quick Hits. I have a player breakdown, Colin Kaepernick. I do have a video coming out very soon on the Cleveland Browns. I've been working on that script for a little while now. And if you're on YouTube and you want to listen to the podcast, but you want to lock your phone, put it in your pocket, listen to it at the gym, listen to it on your way home, to and from to work, then you can go over to Spotify or Stitcher, both free apps, obviously, and you can listen to the audio version of the podcast. And if you want to know the best way to support me, please hit that subscribe button. Like the video if you like the video. Don't just like it because I said so. Like the video if you like the video. Comment down below about anything I say in this episode, any thought-provoking things that you might want to say. Give me your predictions for the divisional round this weekend, and share the video if you really want to support me, because that's the best way, because it gets more eyes on it, gets me more exposure. Alrighty, so for today we have 2 game recaps from last week in the wild card playoffs, and then I'm going to be previewing pretty much every game. The last game, the Seahawks and Packers, it's not really previewing it. It's kind of just giving my ideas and thoughts off my chest about that game in particular. Alrighty, but we are going to start off with the game recaps. And, I'm sorry. No news this week, you guys. I will mention a couple things at the end, and but not really anything super newsworthy that happened outside of a couple coach hirings, and I'll give my thoughts at the end of the video for that one. But we're going to start with the game recaps, and we're going to start with the Bills versus the Texans. This game was really a tale of two halves, where the Buffalo Bills dominated the first half and the Houston Texans stormed back and tied up the game to send it over into overtime, and ultimately they won it in overtime. In the first half, that's what we're going to go over first. Everything that the Buffalo Bills did in the first half were things I said exactly needed to happen in order for them to win, especially with this with the offense. Josh Allen got his legs moving, ended up rushing for 92 yards on 9 attempts in this game. Even Devin Singletary got in on it, having 13 attempts for 53 yards. But the most damage that Devin Singletary did was through the air, catching 6 balls for 76 yards. And to clarify these stats, these aren't stats just in the first half. These are stats for the entire game. I just kind of wanted to say how exactly what they needed to do on offense. They were doing well, and it was what I said needed to happen. Josh Allen needed to get his legs going and moving. I have to take the wins where I can get them, you guys, because, well, if you didn't watch last week's episode, which I know there wasn't too many of you, but if you did, I got all my predictions wrong last week, which very unusual, because the first time in playoff history, a number 3 seed lost to a number 6 seed twice. Never happened, and I didn't expect the Patriots to lose either, so I got all of them wrong because of that. Moving on, sorry about that. Really, the real MVP of the first half is the defense of the Buffalo Bills. They did a tremendous job containing Deshaun Watson in the first half. What they did is they had second-year linebacker Tremaine Edmonds play as the quarterback spy during the game. Deshaun Watson can usually use his fantastic ability to run around and either pick up yards with his legs or be elusive enough for his wide receivers to get open. And I think personally, Deshaun Watson is probably number 1, maybe 2 in that category of using his legs, not just for running, but for moving around the pocket, getting outside the pocket, using his legs to just create more times for his wide receiver. The other guys I'd have up there is Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson is, if he's not 1, then he's 2. If Deshaun Watson's not 1, he's 2. I think it's vice versa there. Dak Prescott does a tremendous job at that. Carson Wentz does a great job at that. Patrick Mahomes does a great job. But with Edmonds staying, the linebacker, with Edmonds staying as a spy, it limited what Watson can do outside the pocket. Every time the pocket collapsed and he got outside the pocket, it seemed as though Edmonds was right there and made sure he didn't get very far with his legs. And if you don't know what a quarterback spy is, it's basically you take one of the linebackers, usually the linebacker, and you have him stay probably about 5 to 7 yards. I'd say about 3 to 7 yards off the line of scrimmage to watch the quarterback. Usually you only use quarterback spies for mobile quarterbacks. You watch the quarterback, make sure he's not getting outside the pocket, picking up a ton of yards. You're basically limiting what the quarterback can do, and that's what they did in the first half extremely well. Edmonds ended up with 8 tackles and 1 sack on the game. So the reason why that was able to work so well is because the Buffalo Bills defensive backs were locking down the receivers, including DeAndre Hopkins, who's a first-team All-Pro guy, limiting the entire offense as a whole to 62 yards in the first half, which is the lowest total amount of yards in the first half in the Deshaun Watson era. I know that's not saying much because that's not a very long time, but still pretty impressive. Moving on to the second half, it was all about Deshaun Watson making magic, leading his team to a comeback from a 16-0 deficit. On the first touchdown, he scored not on flashy moves like Lamar Jackson usually does, with running the ball. He straight up just put his head down, said, if you think you can stop me, come and get me. And the defensive players on the Buffalo Bills couldn't. They came after him and they couldn't. He scored on strength and determination on the play. And it wouldn't be the last time we saw that same strength and determination in this game. We saw it in overtime. If you guys watched the game, you obviously know what play I'm talking about. The other individual on the offense who really stepped it up in the second half was DeAndre Hopkins, ending up with 6 receptions for 90 yards. He wasn't getting wide open either. His average separation yards was just 2.58 yards per catch. If you're running what the league average is, it's 2.8. So it's 2.58 he had. 2.8 is the league average. And one last thing I want to mention is that Duke Johnson, he is the backup running back, or he's the pass-catching running back for the Houston Texans. He's pretty much the only person in the first half on this offense that could do anything in the first half, and he was probably the most efficient guy out on the field out of everybody. He made the most really out of every opportunity that he had. He had 3 rushing attempts for 38 yards, which is an average of 12.6 yards per attempt. And then he had 3 catches for 30 yards for an average of 10 yards per reception. It really might not sound much because, it's only 68 yards total. But he was really leaned on heavily to pick up those first downs, to continue moving the sticks and continuing to drive for the offense. And that's what he did. He did a tremendous job of doing that. And the offense wasn't the only ones to come alive in the second half, as the defense finally woke up and put on a clinic, only allowing 3 points the rest of the game. And for me personally, I want to apologize to the defense as a whole, because I talked major smack on them last week. I said they sucked, they wouldn't do anything. I think that it wasn't going to be a very productive game for them, and that they would be the reason why they lost. They all proved me wrong. Bradley Roby and Vernon Hargreaves played extremely well in the second half, as this secondary only allowed 9 passes for 115 yards in this second half once again. Most of them just little dump-offs, and then they would, scurry off for a certain amount of yards. The 2 plays that really changed the course of the game were both on defense. The first was the sack that J.J. Watt made inside the red zone to stop the Bills from driving all the way down the field and held them to just a field goal. The other being a forced fumble by Whitney Merciless to allow the Texans to drive down the field and score points. It's just 3, but 3 points are a lot of points in this game. Obviously, seeing how close it was, it got sent to overtime. If these 2 plays don't happen in this game, I don't know if the Texans would have come out on top. And moving on to overtime, really the only play to talk about is the final play before the game-winning field goal. Deshaun Watson solidified himself as pretty much the strongest man in the NFL on this play. Once again, he does something amazing to put the team in position to win football games. That's what the guy does. He's amazing. He's incredible. He's one of the really good young quarterbacks in this league. And it's phenomenal that we've lost Drew Brees and Tom Brady in the playoffs, and we still have guys like this being like, oh yeah, we're really good at the quarterback position still, because we have guys like Deshaun Watson who put their team in position to win games. That's flat out just what he does every time. And then we're going to move on to the next game, the Vikings versus Saints. Okay. With the Vikings, I want to go over them first. Start off with the things I liked how they played. And then I'm going to go over a couple things I didn't really like. The reason I'm going to go over them with the Vikings and not the Saints is because it's things they can maybe improve on in the next week, this coming week for the divisional round. But let's start off with Dalvin Cook. He looked refreshed, and the running game as a whole looked really good. The Vikings rushed for 136 yards and 2 touchdowns total as a total team. Dalvin Cook accounted for 94 of those yards and both touchdowns. He also had 3 receptions for 36 yards as well. He looked like the Dalvin Cook from the first 8 weeks of the season instead of the last 8 weeks of the season. He looked really good, and if he can continue that trend, then the Vikings have a really good chance in the playoffs. It says a lot to rush this well against a top 5 rushing defense, especially if you look at who they go up against next week. But I'll get to that later. Kirk Cousins didn't really look amazing, but he didn't have to because of the running game's performance, and that's really what they ask of him. He did look really good when he had to. Okay, he did very well in play action when it was called, which I believe should have probably been called a little bit more because of how well he was doing in play action. He even had pressure in his face in one of those throws, still threw it on the money, and obviously the pass to Adam Thielen in overtime was absolute killer. Okay, won them the game pretty much. Maybe the most important throw in his career was right there. The Vikings as a whole had a chip on their shoulder for, whatever reason. I'm not sure what it is. Whether it was no one giving them a chance or they wanted to prove themselves that the win from a couple seasons ago in the playoffs wasn't a fluke. For whatever the reason, the Vikings wanted to win more than the Saints flat out. You could see it in the hustle, how they played with passion, but the biggest show was the celebrating, or the lack thereof. The Vikings waited till the very end of the game to do any major celebrating. Dalvin Cook, after he scored, ran back to the sideline, waved everyone back, said, hey, come on. Almost saying, let's go. We got more work to do, you guys. No celebrating, no nothing. We haven't won the game yet. Let's go. No sack celebrations. I believe it was Everson Griffin. Got a sack, got down, and, they do the camera angle where they're looking right in their faces, and he just looked at the camera and walked away. No celebrating. No, nothing. They came to play football, and they played to win. And I like the celebrating. I think it's awesome. I think the players should have that freedom to celebrate. But they didn't do any of it because they just came in to win. That's it. This is really the same chip and the same edge that drove the Eagles to win a Super Bowl a few years back. We saw them with the dog mask for underdogs, but we're not really seeing a big show of that, and no one's really talking about it. And we might be looking at a repeat showing of what the Eagles did a couple years ago. I'm not guaranteeing it. I'm just saying we might be looking at it. And the last thing I want to go over is the couple things I didn't like from the Vikings. Honestly, the only things I didn't like from the Vikings were a couple of play callings towards the end of the game. I wasn't a huge fan of the offensive play calling from the 7-minute mark in the fourth quarter and on. It was really repetitive. They were trying to drain the clock. I get it, but wide left, the run to the left to the wide left seemed to be the favorite play call, but it only mustered up 17 yards on 15 attempts. 1.13 yards per attempt is disgusting. It sucks, and you should have called something a little bit more efficient. And on the defensive side of the ball, on the final drive from the Saints, they played really soft and gave up a lot of yards in a short amount of time because of it. And by the time they adjusted to it, it's too late. They were in field goal range, and I'm assuming they're going to make these type of adjustments in the next game to fix these things. I know that the Vikings are notorious for giving up completions and these short yardage throws, but it was very noticeable in the end on the final drive because they did try to adjust back to it, but it was too late. And we're going to move on to the Saints now. I'm very disappointed with the Saints. This isn't the same thing from the past couple of years in the playoffs. This isn't heartbreaking. This isn't unlucky. This isn't the refs screwing you. I'm just going to list off a couple of things that made the Saints lose this game. Number one, you guys missed an opportunity straight from Jump Street on the Adam Thielen fumble. You guys only turned it into 3 points. You got to keep in mind how good this offense is and how good they are in the red zone. And you only turned it into 3 points on a fumble on the opening drive. Disappointing. Number two, Drew Brees threw a really, really stupid and bad interception to double coverage. A mistake that really shouldn't be made by a veteran QB and a Super Bowl winning QB like Drew Brees, especially when the coverage wasn't disguised, it wasn't hidden, it was in his face, and he still threw the ball. 3, Will Lutz missed a field goal in the playoffs after hitting 19 straight. The guy doesn't miss a lot. I'm not going to say, you suck, you shouldn't have missed that. Misses happen, but that's one of the reasons why they lost. It's unfortunate, but it happens. Number 4, Alvin Kamara doesn't look the same. He doesn't look the same, and he doesn't look good. Latavius Murray was more efficient and was the better runner, and he got less carries. You got to hand the guy the ball who is more efficient and the better runner, not the big name guy. Alvin Kamara doesn't look the same. I don't like how he's playing. 5, Drew Brees fumbled the ball after not securing it. His first of the season. Drew, that's a really bad time to have your first fumble of the season. It shouldn't have happened. I'm really disappointed that he didn't secure it again. Rookie move. I don't know what's going on there. And number 6, you let the Vikings score on a game-winning touchdown, and before anyone says that it's a controversial play, stop clicking on those stupid articles. It wasn't controversial. It wasn't a PI. Okay? You're wrong and biased if you think it was. Calls like that haven't been overturned all year by officials, and they haven't been called all year by officials. They weren't going to start right there. You guys aren't getting screwed just because you're the Saints. You lost. You lost the game. You guys got screwed in the past. You got unlucky in the past, and it was heartbreaking in the past. This time, you guys lost. You guys got flat out beat because you underestimated a 6-seed playoff contender. That's why you lost. Really disappointing because I like Drew Brees. So, moving on, we're going to look at the game previews now. Before we do the game previews, give me your guys' prediction before Saturday and Sunday of who you think's going to win. Vikings versus 49ers, Ravens versus Titans, Texans versus Chiefs, and Seahawks versus Packers. And if you want, you guys can give me your final score predictions too. And if you think I'm wrong on any of these, let me know. We can have a discussion down in the comment section. If you guys change my mind, I'll let you know. Be like, oh, you know what? You're right. I am wrong on that. Maybe I should change it. A little bit late because I made a video, but you would at least change my mind. So let's start off. Vikings versus 49ers. I'm going to give you guys a couple of keys for both teams to possibly how maybe they can win this game, and then I'll tell you at the end who I think will win. It's a little different what I did last week, but I like to change it up from here to there. And if you guys have a preferred method on how I preview a lot of these games, let me know. Obviously, it's the end of the season, but if you guys have a preferred method on how I do it, let me know. I would like to cater to you guys. Starting off with the Vikings, the biggest key to the game for them is going to be Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins doesn't have to put up crazy elite numbers or throw over for 300 yards to win this game. All he has to do is take care of the ball and be efficient. Last game against the Saints, he ended up having a passer rating of 96.4. The league average is 90.4. His completion percentage was just over 61%, and the league average is 63.5. As you can see, he was kind of around the league average for everything. He did come up in the big moments that he needed to, and he didn't turn the ball over. If he can improve just a little bit on his efficiency, because he is a very efficient passer all season, he has been. If he can go and revert back to that same efficiency and keep all the other categories around the same numbers, Vikings have a real chance to win this football game, which nobody is giving them that chance. Next is the running game. Vikings have a very good running game. I already talked about it with Dalvin Cook. He's amazing. It's crucial for this group of backs to hit the ground running early and command respect from this 49ers defense, which I do believe they can do because the 49ers have the 17th ranked rushing defense in yards per game, and they're 23rd in yards per carry, which surprised me. I thought they were a pretty good rushing defense. Turns out not so much, which those numbers are a little inflated because they did go up against a lot of rushing quarterbacks, but I'm just giving you guys the facts here. That's what I'm giving you guys, and then I'll give you my prediction at the end. Again, having a running back as good as Dalvin Cook, it gives a good jump off point to look at other running backs around his caliber to see how did they fare against this defense. And the question is, they fared pretty well against this defense, and that's why it's so important to establish a run early so Kirk Cousins can focus on his efficiency over just carrying the team and trying to put up those elite numbers that, he's really not known for. Lastly is going to be the attitude of the Vikings. Okay, I touched on how the Vikings team went into New Orleans. They took care of business because of how their attitude was. They weren't thinking of it as a game. If they won, they can advance. They thought of it as when we will win, we will advance, that there's no other option. If the Vikings can carry that same attitude, then the 49ers could be in trouble. This ain't stats. That's just straight up looking at film and being like, wow, these guys came to play. Next is the 49ers. Biggest key for the San Francisco 49ers is going to be on defense. They're going to have the big task of trying to slow down Dalvin Cook. I do believe that if their rushing defense can step up in this game, then the coverage unit can do what they do best and lock down the opposing offenses, wide receivers. If they could do that, then the game's a wrap. The game's over. The coverage unit is going to have a battle, though, on the outside because Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs, they rank, both these two rank in the top 25 of wide receivers in the league. Only two other duos in the league have done that this year. But the 49ers have the third-ranked slot corner in the league with K'Wan Williams. That's where Stephon Diggs plays majority of the time. And the number one rated cornerback overall in the league, Richard Sherman. On the outside, that's where Adam Thielen plays. If these guys can focus on their assignments at hand and get help from the other members of the secondary, like the safeties, to help them over the top, then I think that the Vikings can be handled by this 49er squad. They just need to, and lastly, go in and handle business. You guys are the number one seed. Go in, handle your business, do your thing. I won't talk about the offense. I won't talk about Jimmy Garoppolo. I think if the defense can do their thing, the 49ers offense is going to do the exact same thing. They're going to play like they have all year, and they're going to come out with the win. But, my final prediction for this game is Vikings come out on top if they have the attitude from the last game. If they don't, and they don't carry it over, they lose. Lose bad, too. Okay, I'm not going to give you a final score prediction, but I will say that I think it will be a blowout if they don't carry that same attitude. Next is going to be the number one seed Ravens and the Titans, who just came off of a win, beating the Patriots, which I'm sure everybody enjoyed quite a bit. I'm not going to be going over anything for the Ravens. I'm going to be going over a possible way to stop Lamar Jackson and this offense. That's it. I think if they can stop him, then they win the game flat out. And if they can't, Ravens dominate. They score a lot of points. We're talking 35, 40 plus. So let's talk about it. Number one, use the Chargers game from the playoffs last year. And you might be thinking to yourself, hey, everybody has had this game film. What do you mean? Everybody should have been using it. No. The Chargers beat Lamar Jackson in the playoffs last year, 23-17. They did this by subbing in more defensive backs in the majority of the plays. 7 defensive backs on the field at a time sometimes. 7. Do the math. You got 7 defensive backs, 4 defensive linemen. No linebackers. Unselfish play, and really a whole team effort right there. And what's the thinking process on that? You sub out the linebackers for more speed. You need more speed to stop speed, right? What's strange about this is, again, the film hasn't been used at all. Only a handful of teams have used a similar set, but not even for a full game. It's just a handful of snaps. That's it. For the entire season combined, a handful of snaps. Not a handful of snaps per game, a handful of snaps combined for the entire season. It's a strange and unorthodox way of playing football, subbing in that many defensive backs. But Lamar Jackson isn't anything anyone has really seen before. Okay, let's be real. The Titans have their backs against the wall in this situation. They're major underdogs. Facing an offense that's dynamic and unorthodox, you gotta be weird to beat weird. flat out. And if they think about it and be like, hey, we have no other choice but to try to use this. We don't have a chance. Let's try it. There you go. You got the game film. Use it. Next, if they don't want to use this, obviously you could do this. Play with your same set. Use the Chiefs game from this year. Okay? The Chiefs earlier in this year found a way to beat Lamar Jackson. The other loss that they had was to the Browns, but that's a divisional game. It's a little different in my opinion. I've said it multiple times on this channel. Divisional games are different. Moving on. The primary way they did this is they designed disguised coverages and turning Lamar Jackson into a more traditional pocket passer for this game. And they showed quite a bit of disguised pressure as well, which is something the Titans specialize in, which we'll get to later. But because Lamar was thinking that the defense was calling a blitz, again with the disguised pressures, he was making up his mind from the get-go, stay in the pocket, make the quick throw. Then, at that point, when the ball is snapped, he realizes, oh crap, I have more time. Then he starts making his reads. At the same time, the defense has already dropped back into coverage and has most of everything locked down, which forces Lamar to either try to run, which at that point, pocket is already trying to collapse on him, or go to his check down, which in that game, he went to his check down a lot. And the check down isn't going to move the sticks. It's just an outlet for a couple of yards. Get the ball out of your hands. Don't take the sack. And the Chiefs did that exact thing. And talking about pressures, Dean Pease is the defensive coordinator for the Titans. And his specialty is pressure concepts. The most successful one that he's called is called a simulated pressure. Simulated pressure is basically sending a rush that looks like a blitz, but only with 4 rushers instead of 5 or 6. So basically has a pass rusher, like the traditional pass rusher, a defensive end, your outside linebackers, something like that, looking like they're going to pass rush as usual. But then you're bringing up a linebacker or a safety up in the box as well, looking like they're going to blitz. Well, that safety or linebacker does rush the passer. But then that traditional pass rusher that we talked about earlier drops back into coverage. So what this does is the offense will try to slide the protection, okay? And hopefully they slide it the wrong way and create mismatches, or a completely unblocked defender that just rushes right for Lamar Jackson to try to get the sack. The Titans will win this game if they play an absolute perfect game on defense against Lamar. Here's my reasoning for this. I thought the Ravens are going to win because, well, the Ravens are dominant. But something's really telling me, honestly, that, no, you really got to pick the Titans. You know, the Titans have been my dark horse since the week after Ryan Tannehill took over. I said from the get-go, hey, they are my dark horse to make the playoffs. And they ended up making it. And then I said, yo, they can make a deep playoff run. And then they went up against the Patriots, and I made the mistake by going against them. I should have just went with my gut and said, hey, no, I still believe in the Titans because, hey, they're my pick. They're my dark horse to make a deep playoff run. I'm not saying Super Bowl. I'm just saying a deep playoff run. So I'm going to go with the Titans on a gut feeling and because of a prediction that I made months ago. That's my reasoning for that, basically. Maybe not the most satisfactory explanation, but it is mine. We're going to move on to the Texans versus the Chiefs. We're at the halfway point. And it's going to be the last full preview. Again, the Seahawks and Packers isn't really a big preview. It's just kind of a couple of thoughts that I have on those particular teams. I'm going to go over the keys for each team once again, just like I did earlier, and then pick a winner from there. We're going to start off with the Texans, and their biggest key to winning the game is play a similar type of game on the offensive side of the ball. What I mean by that is the Texans versus Chiefs Week 6 matchup. The Texans ran the ball really well, which is the biggest weakness on the Chiefs as a whole. Carlos Hyde ran for over 116 yards and a touchdown. So the magical number is 100. Why 100? What is that? 100 yards. In each of the Chiefs' 4 losses, the opposing running back has rushed for over 100 yards. The more they rush the ball, the longer of time of possession they will have, keeping Patrick Mahomes off the field, which is going to obviously be very, very important. Keeping to the theme of running backs, getting Duke Johnson heavily involved in the passing game will be crucial to me, in my opinion. The Chiefs have not fared well against pass-catching running backs. And Duke Johnson last week, I already talked about it earlier, extremely efficient with the ball in his hands, period. So let's get him more involved and have him, because Carlos Hyde isn't very good as a pass catcher. Duke Johnson's that guy. So let's get him more involved and put more packages for Duke Johnson to get the ball in his hands. Okay? Because when it comes to running backs, the Chiefs are not very good. So let's get these running backs going early and often. Okay? Next for the Texans, the defense needs to play even better than it did last week. I did say earlier that the Texans' defensive backs proved me wrong, and they still very much did that. But it's different when going up against the likes of John Brown and Cole Beasley, and Devin Singletary, compared to this week where you have Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill, Sammy Watkins, who they didn't have in the previous matchup. You have Shady McCoy. Come on, man. And obviously you got Patrick Mahomes, a healthy Patrick Mahomes. He was hobbled last time. Stopping this air attack early is going to be imperative because the Chiefs are third best at scoring points in the first quarter and the first half. Lastly, play 4 quarters. Not 1.5, Texans. You got to play a full game in the divisional round. If you want to move on, you got to play a full game of football. What Deshaun Watson did at the end of the game last week was amazing. It was spectacular. I praise him. I've already praised him for that. But you got to make that same type of effort and commitment and play that level for 4 quarters, 3.5 even, more than 1.5. That's all I'm asking. All right, and let's move on to the Chiefs. Honestly, I'm going to be honest with you guys. It was really, really hard to find the biggest key for the Chiefs because they have a lot of things going for them, obviously, except for the running game. That's the only thing that really doesn't go for them. And so let me go over a couple stats for you guys. This Chiefs defense is 6-0 ever since week 11, only allowing 11.5 points per game. So this defense has really found its footing and found a place of its own. The Chiefs have the advantage of the week because of the bye. Okay? Andy Reid, the coach for the Chiefs, is very good coming off of a bye, only losing 5 times in his career coming off a bye. That's regular and postseason. Those wins are 22, so they're 22-5. Andy Reid is, at least. And the last thing I want to talk about is they need to stop Will Fuller. Texans are 8-3 with Will Fuller in the lineup. They're 3-3 without him. So one of the biggest keys is just going to be stopping him. So if you want a key, Will Fuller is the key. And if they stop him, that's another point under their belt saying, yep, we got this. We're going to win the game. For me, Chiefs pull this one out if it wasn't obvious. Chiefs pull this one out at their home stadium in Arrowhead. And lastly, we have Seahawks and Packers. I'm going to give you my prediction right off the get-go because it's going to be short, very short. I think the Seahawks are going to win this, even with them being banged up. And I know I went against them last week. It was really stupid. I went with stats a lot last week instead of gut feeling. As you guys could tell, it was a very stat-filled episode this week. I'm kind of going off the gut feelings and what I think. And Seahawks are going to win this one. Packers aren't very good. They're middle of the pack in every single category. They've beat one decent team all year outside of their division. I mean, and that's the Chiefs. Good team. I shouldn't say decent team. That's a good team. But they haven't beat anybody else outside the division besides that. Nobody good. I don't think this team is very good. It blows my mind that they got the number 2 seed. They fell into the number 2 seed. They didn't earn it. I think that the Packers are going to get blown out. I really do. I don't like the Packers because I think they've not earned their spot in this playoff. Okay? They're going to lose. Plain and simple. I know they have the home field advantage, and the last 3 winners from this matchup, they've all been at home. So Seahawks, when they're at home, they win. Packers, when they're at home, they win. Kind of self-explanatory. 2 out of those 3 have gone to overtime. They've been thriller games. I think it won't be like that. I think the Seahawks are going to go in there, they're going to win, and they're going to walk away with a nice W under their belt. Russell Wilson's going to put the team on his back and move on. That's all I have for you guys when it comes to the previews. And once again, no really newsworthy things have happened this week outside of a couple of coach hirings. Obviously, the biggest is probably Jason Garrett being fired, Mike McCarthy being hired, and a lot of other coaching staff changes for the Dallas Cowboys. If you didn't know, I'm a Dallas Cowboys fan. So there's a lot going on there. I'm going to reserve my feelings about Mike McCarthy. I do think he's a good coach. I think Aaron Rodgers is a little bit entitled, and he doesn't agree with anybody. So he kind of just does what he wants. I don't think Mike McCarthy's a bad coach at all. So we'll see how this entire coaching staff does when the season starts, because it's a talented roster. But can they bring it together, coach these guys up, and make sure that, tackle. Make sure you guys can tackle. But I digress. And the only other thing I can think of is Kyle Long retires after 7 seasons. The Long family is a very successful football family, and I congratulate him on the 7 seasons, even though it's a little short. It's only 7, but it's 7 more than most people have. Congratulations to Kyle Long for the decent career, but obviously it is still newsworthy. And honestly, that's all I have for you guys today. If you guys like the video, again, leave a like and leave a comment if you guys have anything to say about it. If you disagree with my little rant about the Packers, let me know. If you're a Packers fan, you're probably going to be the one to let me know. And if I'm wrong about it, and tell me why I'm wrong about it. Don't just say you're wrong about the Packers. Why? Why am I wrong about the Packers? Give me reasons, okay? More than just Aaron Rodgers. All right, you guys, that's all I have for you guys today. I love you guys. Peace.